Hello, this video is titled Cultural Marxism, the 10 Techniques Being Used in the U.S. Today. It is an article written by Janet Levy, an American thinker. 10 techniques that Marxists have deployed to gain influence. And these thoughts are her thoughts, but I wanted to go through this article of hers and take a look at these 10 techniques because they so well fit into this series. The 10 techniques of placing the Marxist cancer into the U.S. bloodstream include these: the manipulation of language, rewriting history, gaslighting, DARVO, that is to deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender, identity politics, disinformation and obfuscation, oppressor versus oppressed, entryism, degrowth, and playing the victim. Now let's take a look at her remarks on each one of these. Manipulation of language. George Orwell described how communist dictatorships have used language for controlling people by manipulating perception. Abortion is described as pro-choice, sanitizing the extinguishing of life. Illegal border crossers are undocumented migrants, absolving criminal intent. New sets of pronouns and euphemisms, sex assigned at birth, gender-affirming care, disrupt reality while pretending to preserve human dignity. She continues, convenient labeling is also used against those who question the left. It's called hate speech if you disagree, or you're a white supremacist, or you're a right-wing extremist, Islamophobe. The left freely and aggressively uses terms to condemn skeptics and cancel them. So that's the manipulation of language. The rewriting of history. This battlefield is about rewriting history. Take away the heritage of a people and they are easily persuaded, Marx said. It's a chillingly true observation and explains why Marxists lay so much stress on presenting history so that it molds public opinion in their favor. Marxists want Americans to believe that this great country and its heritage are defined by two great evils, racism and slavery. So take a look at this image from the 1619 Project. Right behind the head of the author, it describes this as a new origin story, i.e. the rewriting of history, and then it also says, created by Nicole Hannah-Jones. It's a creation of a new narrative. This is Marxism. That's why they proclaim that America was founded when the first slaves arrived in 1619, not when the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. This is cultural blasphemy, aimed at destroying a traditionally sanguine culture. That is, people that are at ease, accepting, cheerful, optimistic, confident. Instead of a forward-looking culture, they create a guilt-inducing culture of self-loathing. So that's the technique of rewriting history. What about gaslighting? This psychological maneuver uses cognitive dissonance to sow doubt and guilt and makes people question their memories, perceptions, judgment, and reality. Some examples. Election 2020 was the most secure ever. The southern border is secure. The January 6th event at the Capitol was an insurrection. The Justice Department actually is equal and fair. Biological men and women's sports, there's no impact. President Biden is sharp as a tack. Hunter Biden laptop is Russia disinformation. So that's the technique of gaslighting. This fourth one, DARVO, or to deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender, is actually a clinical term that I'm becoming aware of for the first time, and Janet Levy describes it thusly. This is a technique typical of cultural Marxist. When parents objected to drag queen story hour in schools, Marxists responded by first denial. Oh, drag queen hour only engages children in meaningful activity. When that didn't work, they attacked. They described protesters as bigots, perpetuating LGBTQ hatred. And then finally, when that didn't work, they reversed the victim and offender status, claimed they felt threatened by the transphobia, which could turn violent. Parents who opposed pornography in school libraries were accused of censorship and LGBTQ phobia. So that's the DARVO technique of cultural Marxist. The next technique is identity politics, claiming power or entitlement based on race, ethnicity, sex, or sexual identification, and is usually accompanied by loud assertions of victimhood. Intersectionality, a cousin of identity, has invaded the evaluation process for public and private institutions, job candidates, and academic performance. This is all based on a notion that a person may be marginalized or victimized by any aspect of his or her identity or experience. Intersectionality demands compensation through relaxed standards. Identity politics is also used to coerce support. Merit, effort, innovation, grit, individualism, virtues that transform lives and cultures, are negated as undesirable white or capitalist traits. Sixthly is disinformation and obfuscation. This may take the form of outright institutional lying, a norm in the erstwhile USSR. It has become a prominent feature of American institutions. For example, after the assassination attempt on candidate Donald Trump, missteps in planning, communication, staffing, and reconnaissance were covered up with lies. The Secret Service director claimed that the building used by the shooter wasn't secured because it had a dangerous sloped roof. Witnesses saw the shooter and asked law enforcers to act, but agents later claimed they weren't able to eliminate the threat in time. Disinformation and cover-up. How about oppressor versus oppressed as a seventh technique? This technique is used to seek revenge by inducing guilt for an alleged privileged status. It's commonly used against whites in Western capitalist countries, but not limited to them, as the propaganda against Israel shows. The Jewish nation is maligned as a genocidal oppressor, indiscriminately killing innocents in Gaza. Never mind that the Islamic terrorist group Hamas massacred more than 1,200 Israel citizens and took more than 200 people hostage. Entryism, number 8. This is a classic Leninist strategy of gaining control over organizations, especially centrist or non-hardline leftist political groups, by gradually infiltrating them and lying low until the crucial takeover. The Labour Party in Britain is well described in Frederick Forsyth's The Fourth Protocol. The humanities departments at American universities, once famous for their classical liberal education, have been compromised through entryism. Continuing. Entryism is also deployed by pressuring or shaming organizations and businesses for not employing people of certain groups, say blacks or Hispanics or transgenders. The aim is to eventually transform these organizations to foster Marxist policies. Number 9. Degrowth. Pushing goals such as sustainability, ESG, net zero emissions, and so on under the guise of saving the planet. Marxists aim to contract Western economies. Meanwhile, China continues to pollute and grow. Eventually, standards of living will deteriorate in the West and populations will decline, and the potential for communism to take root will accelerate. And then lastly, playing the victim. To garner support, the left always created victim groups it claims to fight for. It demeans individuals by making them believe that they are not responsible for their action or lack of action. For example, low math scores of black students are blamed on systematic racism, not on lack of parental involvement, bad teaching, or lack of motivation. So in summary, in summing it all up, it might be worth pointing out if cultural Marxist ideology seems muddled with contradictions, it's by design, to sow confusion and division and making it easier to gain influence and control. An example of such a contradiction is the putative ideal of feminism. Advancing equality for women in all spheres of society is the stated goal. However, Marxists don't care about women, because if they did, why would they put them in harm's way by forcing them to share bathrooms with biological men posing or identifying as women? Why would they revile women who object to the intrusion as transphobic? The truth is that the end game is not about the issue, women's rights, saving the planet, protecting transgenders, people of color, or whatever. It's about fundamentally transforming American society and preparing the soil for communism. It's all about the revolution. So those are Janet Levy's thoughts, and I appreciate her for them. And it's the 10 techniques that Marxists have deployed to gain influence in American culture. My name's Craig Seibert. Thanks for listening.